it's Stephanie and welcome back to my channel. So today I have another recent reads video for you, numbers 141 to 150. This one does have an extra one in it because somehow my numbering got off by one. So we're just going to put 11 in here, catch up, move on. So, number 140, which should have been in the last video, is A Canadian Heroine by Mrs. Harry Coghill. This is a Victorian novel, and it's a romance novel, and it has a 16-year-old girl living in a small town along the St. Lawrence River, and she's being courted by a Canadian man. She also becomes enamored by this visiting English aristocrat whose interests may not be sincere. I started off enjoying this for the most part. However, the more I read it, the more my enjoyment just got killed off. Normally with classics, I can keep in mind when they were written. This one was so incredibly racist and misogynistic toward Indigenous people and women. And there's one character, Lucia. Oh my God, she's so freaking irritating. Every time an Indigenous man showed up in her vicinity, she would just scream and be all over the top and just freak out. And she had no personality whatsoever. And I hated this book so much. I hated it so much. And the only character I liked was Maurice, and he wasn't even in there for most of the book. Do not recommend this book. 1 star. It's ridiculous. So don't waste your time. Number 141 is The Tuesday Night Survivors Club by Lynn Cahoon. This is a new series, the Survivors Club Book Club Mystery Series, and it's set in Sedona, Arizona. And in this, we follow Rarity Jones, and she is a breast cancer survivor. And now that she's cancer-free, she is devoting her life to helping others find their way through books to healing. So she's opened a bookstore focused on the power of healing, and she's also started the Tuesday Night Survivors Book Club. Their book club is disrupted when one of their members suddenly goes missing. Her car has been abandoned on a trail, and her dog has been left with a friend, and Rarity is very sure that something terrible has happened, and so she gets involved to solve the mystery. Things go from there. I enjoyed this one. I wasn't sure if it would be as upbeat as cozy mysteries normally are, but I did really enjoy how positive and uplifting the story was. I love that the protagonist was very realistic and smart, and there was a good amount of comedic relief. I did think that the love interest was a little bit forced, even though I loved his actions at the end of the novel, and I do feel like this is a setup for a potential love triangle, which I don't know, but the audiobook was fantastic, and I look forward to reading book 2. Next, I read The Proof is in the Poison by Diane Kelly. This is book 2 in the Southern Homebrew Mystery Series, and we follow Hattie Hayes, and she is a moonshine shop owner. And a train convention has come to town, to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it's the Chattanooga Choo Choo Model Train Convention. And she thinks this is the perfect opportunity to promote her moonshine to the folks who have come to the city for the event. But an attendee dies after drinking some of her moonshine, and now she has to prove her innocence. This one was really fun. Normally trains would not interest me, but Diane Kelly did a really good job of making the setting fun and including new characters with the setting that made it fun. And Hattie is a very likable protagonist. She's not dense or irritating, And I do enjoy watching her relationships, platonic and romantic, develop. And I really enjoyed the sprinkling of the history of moonshine throughout the story. Yes, I am really, really excited for book 3. I think it'll be really good. And this overall is a really solid cozy mystery series. Next, I read Adam Bede by George Eliot. I read this in June, and this book still comes to mind. I still think about it, and it still just makes my heart happy. So this is one of those books that comes into your life at exactly the right time, and it makes you fall in love with it. And I was actually so engrossed in this book that I read it in less than 2 days. It was just so gripping to me, and it's not even that the plot was so action-packed through the whole thing. It was that I was so invested in the characters and what was going to happen to them and their journeys. The slow build of the plot and the character development is just top tier in this book. Her characters are very nuanced and human and relatable, and I'm not a religious person, and neither was George Eliot, but I really like the way that she talked about religion in this book and the beautiful aspects of it and the uplifting aspects of it, which I really, really appreciated. And I really liked Dinah. She's a female minister, which I've never seen that in Victorian literature, so points for that. And I really grew to love her, and I love that she's a character that really believes in what she's preaching and practices what she preaches in the best way. And the prose is so gorgeous and so vivid, but it's not overly saccharine. And I just found myself rereading passages of this because they were just really lovely. So she touches on society and themes of patriarchy, pain, family, community, redemption, morality. And she does this through the plot and the plot twists. This does have trigger warnings for death of a child, so just be aware. It's nothing graphic like it would be, today, but it is mentioned a lot, and it's kind of a big part. So it can be a bit harrowing and really, really sad at times, so just be aware going into it. But I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I'm already looking forward to rereading it. It is one of my favorite books that I read this year. I just thought it was such a beautiful, beautiful book. Next, I reread A Memory Called Empire by Arcadia Martine. This is book number 1 in the Texcalan duology. And I reread this for shelf space with Evie and Lana. And so in this book, we follow Ambassador Mahit, and she arrives in the center of the Texcalan Empire only to discover that her predecessor, who was the previous ambassador from her mining station, has died, and no one will admit that his death wasn't an accident or that Mahit might be next to die. So it's very politically unstable, and it's a stressful time. So now she has to discover who's behind the murder, rescue herself, and save her station, all while navigating this new to her culture and, doing her duty as an ambassador to her home. I loved this so much. This is a sci-fi book, and I love this even more on the second read. This has some of the best world building I've ever read. She does a really good job of incorporating linguistics and a complex culture into this really sweeping plot. Some of the communication is in poems, which I thought was really cool. And there's just enough plot and character. I think it's a good balance of both. So highly, highly recommend. Next, I read Mirror Sight by Kristen Britton. This is book 5 in the Green Rider series. And out of all the ones I've read so far, this one is my favorite. I won't go into details because this is the 5th book in the series, but things happened. Met one of my favorite characters. I cried a lot, happy and sad. And it was just fantastic. So I gave that one 5 out of 5 stars. Next is Bodies and Bows. This is book 3 in the Apron Shop Mystery Series by Elizabeth Penny. And this one was my favorite one in the series. You know, just like a normal cozy mystery, someone ends up dead and our main character, Iris, has to get involved in the investigation and figure out who done it. And this one, so good, well-paced, great mystery, highly recommend. Next, I read The Warden by Anthony Trollope. This is book 1 in his Chronicles of Barsetshire series. It's I didn't know what to expect going in. I've heard that it's people's least favorite in the series, so I think because I went in with my expectations lowered, I actually really enjoyed this. And it's very witty and satirical, and we follow Septimus Harding, and he has his values attacked by zealous reformers and newspapers, and it's just a huge scandal. And it does cover a lot of church politics, which I actually found fascinating. So I highly recommend this. Trollope is one of those writers that is very witty, and his writing is just very, very nice, and I find his plots very gripping. So I think this was a really, really good place with Anthony Trollope. And the next 2 books I read are by the same author. So it's Reserved for Murder and A Fatal Booking, which are books 2 and 3 in the Book Lovers B&B Mystery Series. I'm done with this series. I have not liked any of the ones in this series, and it's not the writing style, it's the character. And Charlotte is the main character. She's extremely unlikable, and her asides really come off as snide and snobby instead of just being observations. She's kind of a wet blanket. The story drags because I don't like her. A lot of the premise is far-fetched, and I feel like a lot of the book is dialogue and a lot of telling, not showing. I do plan on trying her other series. Just this particular series, I'm done with. I'm not continuing on if any other books come out. And finally, I read Ditched for Murder, which is book 2 in the Sophie Kimball Mystery Series by J.C. Eaton. And we follow Sophie Kimball, and she has now moved to Arizona to be closer to her mother, and her mother's very dynamic retirement community. Her Aunt Ina is having a wedding, and she has roped Sophie into doing pretty much everything. And then a dead body shows up in her mother's neighbor's yard, and her aunt's fiance is acquainted with the victim. And so Sophie is drawn into the case. Things go from there. And as usual, it was laugh out loud funny. The characters are larger than life. Highly, highly recommend the series. It's just a blast. So have you read any of these? If so, please let me know down below. If you'd like to leave an emoji, leave some kind of craft emoji down below. Sewing, knitting, art, what have you. As always, if you like this video, make sure to click the thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you'd like. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.